The sound of my own bones grinding together. That's what I remember most from 20 years of mornings. Not my husband's coffee brewing downstairs, not the birds outside our bedroom window, just that awful wet grinding sound every time I tried to swing my legs out of bed. Like old machinery that needed oil but would never get it. I was 63 when it started. A little stiffness in my knees after gardening. Getting older, I told myself, part of life. 20 years later, I could barely dress myself. The woman who used to climb mountains in Taiwan, who carried her babies up 3 flights of stairs in our first apartment in San Francisco, who worked 16-hour days in my family's restaurant without complaint. I couldn't open a jar of pickles. But 3 months ago, everything changed. And it wasn't because of any doctor, any prescription, any physical therapy session that cost me $40 just to be told to take it easy. It was because of something growing in my own backyard. Something I've been walking past every day for 15 years. Something so simple, so ordinary, that when I tell people what it is, they look at me like I've lost my mind. The doctors never mentioned it, not once, not in 20 years of appointments, x-rays, MRIs, blood tests that came back normal while I sat there knowing nothing about this felt normal. Not when they handed me prescriptions that made my stomach bleed, not when they suggested surgery that might help, might not, might leave me worse than before. They never said a word about the one thing that actually worked. I want to tell you about those 20 years, about what it's like to watch your body betray you one joint at a time, about the morning I couldn't lift my arms to wash my hair and sat in the shower crying like a child, about the night I fell in my own kitchen and lay there for 2 hours because I couldn't get up, couldn't call for help, couldn't do anything but stare at the ceiling and wonder if this was how it would end. But mostly, I want to tell you about what saved me. Because if you're in pain right now, if you've been told there's nothing more they can do, if you're tired of being told to manage your expectations, you need to hear this. The first time I felt it, I was 38, working lunch rush at Golden Dragon, our family restaurant in Chinatown. My mother-in-law had recipes from Guangzhou that drew lines around the block. I was on my feet 12 hours a day, carrying trays, lifting pots, moving fast because in the restaurant business, fast means money and slow means failure. One afternoon, after a particularly busy weekend, I felt something catch in my right knee, like a door slamming shut. I limped through the rest of the shift, iced it that night, and figured it would be fine by morning. That was my first mistake, thinking it would be fine. The knee got better mostly, but something had changed, something deep inside that I couldn't name yet. Over the next few years, other joints started talking back. My left hip would ache after long days. My fingers would stiffen in the morning, taking longer to bend around the coffee cup. My back would seize up if I bent wrong, stayed bent too long, breathed wrong, it seemed like. I ignored it all. We had a business to run, 3 kids to raise, a mortgage to pay. Pain was a luxury I couldn't afford. By 55, I was popping ibuprofen like candy. Little orange pills scattered around my purse, my car, the restaurant kitchen. Just temporary, I kept telling myself, just until things slow down. But things never slow down, do they? The restaurant got busier. The kids had problems of their own. My husband's arthritis started acting up, and suddenly I was taking care of everyone except myself. I don't know who needs to hear this, but if you're carrying everyone else's weight while your own body falls apart, maybe you understand what I'm talking about. Subscribe if you want to hear the rest, because what happened next, what the doctors told me when I finally went in, That's when everything got worse. Dr. Martinez had been our family doctor for 15 years. Good man, spoke English and Cantonese, understood our culture, never made me feel stupid for waiting so long to come in. But when he saw my x-rays, his face changed. Margaret, he said, pointing to the gray shadows on the light board, you have significant arthritis in multiple joints, knees, hips, hands, spine. This is extensive. Extensive. Such a polite word for what felt like being torn apart from the inside. He prescribed meloxicam, 15 milligrams once a day. This should help with the inflammation, he said, and we'll need to talk about lifestyle changes. Less time on your feet. Maybe it's time to consider retiring from the restaurant. Retiring at 58. From the business my family had built from nothing. From the kitchen where I'd learned my mother-in-law's secret recipes. Where I'd taught my own daughters to fold dumplings. Where every scar on my hands told a story of working toward something better. The meloxicam helped for about 6 months. Then my stomach started burning. Not just after meals, all the time. A constant gnawing ache that felt like acid eating through my insides. Dr. Martinez added omeprazole. For the stomach irritation, he explained. Common side effect. So now I was taking one pill to fix the pain and another pill to fix what the first pill was doing to me. The arithmetic of getting older, I thought. Everything requires something else to balance it out. But the pain kept growing, not just in the joints now, but everywhere. My muscles ached from compensating for the joints that hurt. My neck hurt from holding my head differently because my back hurt. My left knee hurt because my right knee couldn't bear weight properly. It was like watching dominoes fall in slow motion, each part of my body giving up as it tried to help another part that was already gone. Dr. Martinez referred me to a rheumatologist, Dr. Chen, a specialist at UCSF. More x-rays, blood tests for rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, things I've never heard of. An MRI that cost more than we made at the restaurant in a week. The results were always the same. Osteoarthritis, degenerative joint disease. We can manage it, but we can't cure it. Manage it. That became the theme of the next 10 years. Managing pain instead of living. Swapping meloxicam for celecoxib when the stomach problems got worse. Adding tramadol when the celecoxib stopped working. Physical therapy twice a week with a therapist who meant well, but whose exercises made everything hurt more. You need to keep moving, she'd say, watching me wince through leg lifts. Use it or lose it, but moving hurt. Everything hurt. Getting out of bed hurt. Sitting too long hurt. Standing too long hurt. There was no position, no activity, no time of day when my body felt at peace. Sleep became something that happened between waves of pain. I'd drift off around midnight, wake up at 3 when my hip seized up, lie there until 5 trying to find a position that didn't make my back scream, finally get up at 6 feeling like I'd been in a fight all night. The restaurant suffered. My marriage suffered. I snapped at customers for no reason, couldn't concentrate on orders, forgot ingredients in dishes I'd been making for 30 years. My husband started doing more of the cooking, then most of the cooking, then all of the cooking, while I sat on a stool behind the register, counting out change with fingers that moved like rusty hinges. The worst part wasn't the pain itself. It was watching everyone around me adapt to my limitations. My youngest daughter stopped asking me to help with her college applications because writing hurt my hands. My son stopped inviting me to his kids' soccer games because sitting on bleachers was torture. My husband stopped suggesting we take walks together, stopped planning trips, stopped talking about the future at all. I became the sick person in every conversation, the one everyone worried about but no one knew how to fix. By the time I turned 70, I was taking 5 different medications. Tramadol for pain, omeprazole for my stomach, lisinopril because the tramadol raised my blood pressure, simvastatin because the lisinopril interacted with something else I was taking, and trazodone because the pain kept me awake, but the trazodone made me groggy. So Dr. Chen added modafinil to help me stay alert during the day. I had a pill organizer with compartments for morning, afternoon, evening, bedtime, like my grandmother used to have, back when I thought being old meant being wise and peaceful. I never imagined it meant being a pharmacy with legs. The breaking point came 3 years ago. I was getting ready for my granddaughter's high school graduation. Simple task: put on a dress, do my hair, drive to the school. But I couldn't reach the zipper on the back of the dress, couldn't lift my arms high enough. I stood in front of my bedroom mirror for 20 minutes, trying different angles, different approaches, finally sitting down on the bed and crying like I'd lost someone. My husband found me there. "What's wrong?" he asked, and I couldn't even explain. How do you tell someone that you can't dress yourself? That the woman who raised 3 children and ran a business and took care of everyone can't manage a simple zipper? He helped me, of course, but something died that day. Some last piece of pride or independence or hope that I'd been carrying around without realizing it. I started researching surgery. Hip replacement, knee replacement, spinal fusion. The internet is a dangerous place when you're desperate. You read success stories and horror stories, statistics that say 80% improvement, and warnings about infections, blood clots, procedures that make things worse instead of better. Dr. Chen was cautious. At your age, Margaret, surgery carries risks. Your bone density isn't optimal. Your cardiovascular health is compromised by the medications. We could try steroid injections first. Steroid injections. Cortisone shots directly into the joints. It sounded medieval, but I was willing to try anything. The first set of injections helped for about 2 months. I felt almost normal again, almost like myself. I helped cook Thanksgiving dinner, played with my grandchildren, took walks with my husband like we used to. Then the effect wore off, and the pain came back worse than before. The second round of injections helped for 6 weeks. The third round, 3 weeks. By the 4th round, they weren't helping at all, and Dr. Chen explained that too many steroid injections could damage the joints even more. "We're at the point where we need to consider more aggressive treatment," he said during my appointment last spring. "There are some newer biologics we could try, injectable medications that target the immune system." He showed me brochures for drugs with names like adalimumab and etanercept, medications that cost $3,000 a month and required regular blood monitoring because they could suppress my immune system so much that a simple cold could kill me. I read something that changed everything. It said patience after 60 is the fastest way to die forgotten. My doctor said wait. I stopped waiting. That guide is in the description below. I left Dr. Chen's office that day and drove home in silence. At 79, I was being offered a choice between living in pain and risking my life to maybe feel better. Neither option felt like living. That night I couldn't sleep, not because of the pain, though that was there too, because I kept thinking about something my mother-in-law used to say back when she was teaching me to cook. "Food is medicine, Margaret. Western doctors give you pills. Chinese grandmothers give you soup." I'd always thought it was just old country wisdom, the kind of thing you smile at but don't take seriously. But lying there at 3 in the morning, listening to my joints ache and my stomach burn from 20 years of medication, I started wondering, what if she was right? What if there was something I'd been missing all along? The next morning, instead of going to another doctor's appointment, I drove to my daughter Linda's house. Linda, my middle child, the one who'd inherited her grandmother's green thumb and love of growing things. Her backyard was like a small farm. Tomatoes, herbs, vegetables I couldn't name, and in the back corner, something I'd walked past 100 times without really seeing. "Mom, what are you doing back there?" Linda called from the kitchen window. I was standing next to a patch of what looked like weeds, tall plants with long, dark green leaves that looked familiar, but I couldn't place them. "What are these plants?" I asked when she came outside. "Oh, those? That's just stinging nettle. It grows everywhere here. I keep meaning to pull it up, but it's actually kind of pretty when it flowers." Stinging nettle. The name hit me like a slap. I hadn't heard it in 40 years, not since my mother-in-law used to dry the leaves and make tea from them. "Your joints will thank you," she used to say, pressing cups of the bitter green tea into my hands after long days at the restaurant. I drank it to be polite, never imagining it was anything more than another old country remedy. But standing there in Linda's backyard, looking at these familiar leaves, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not the desperate hope of someone trying a new medication. Real hope, like maybe there was an answer that didn't come in a prescription bottle. "Can I take some of these?" I asked Linda. She looked at me like I'd asked to take home her garbage. "Mom, those are weeds. They'll sting you if you touch them wrong." "I know what they are," I said, though I was only starting to remember. "I need gloves and scissors." That afternoon, I sat in my kitchen with a pile of nettle leaves, trying to remember everything my mother-in-law had taught me about preparing them. Blanch them in boiling water first to remove the sting. Dry them if you want tea, or cook them fresh like spinach. She used to make soup with them, I remembered. Nettle and ginger and chicken broth, simmered for hours until the kitchen smelled like medicine and comfort mixed together. I made tea first, cautious, uncertain, but determined to try something that didn't come with a list of side effects longer than my grocery list. The tea was bitter, earthy, like drinking liquid grass. But as I sipped it, I could hear my mother-in-law's voice. "Give it time, Margaret. Real food takes time to work, not like pills that trick your body into feeling different. Food teaches your body to heal itself." I drank nettle tea every day for a week. Nothing dramatic happened. No sudden relief, no miracle morning where I woke up pain-free. But something subtle started to change. The constant grinding ache in my knees became less constant. The stiffness in my hands took less time to work out in the morning. Small changes, so small I almost convinced myself I was imagining them. But then my husband noticed. "You seem different this week," he said over dinner. "Less tense." Tense. I hadn't realized how much of my energy went into bracing against pain until I felt it starting to ease. I increased the dose. 2 cups of nettle tea a day, morning and evening. Then I started adding fresh nettle leaves to soups, stir-fries, anywhere I would normally use spinach or chard. Linda thought I'd lost my mind. "Mom, you can buy vegetables at the store. You don't have to forage in my backyard." But I kept at it. 2 weeks in, I noticed I was sleeping better. 3 weeks in, I realized I hadn't taken my afternoon tramadol in 2 days. Not because I forgot, but because I didn't need it. A month in, I did something I hadn't done in 5 years. I got dressed without help. reached behind my back and zipped up a dress like it was nothing, like I was 40 again, or 50, or any age when my body did what I asked it to do without negotiation. That's when I started researching in earnest, not looking for miracle cures or internet promises, but trying to understand what was actually happening in my body. What I found changed everything I thought I knew about arthritis, about food, about medicine itself. Stinging nettle, it turns out, isn't some folk remedy that works because people want it to work. It's been studied by real scientists at real universities for real effects on inflammation and joint pain. The leaves contain compounds that reduce inflammatory markers in the blood. They support kidney function, which helps the body clear waste products that can build up in joints. They provide minerals like silica and boron that are essential for bone health, but often missing from modern diets. In Germany, nettle extract is prescribed by doctors as a standard treatment for arthritis. In France, it's included in official medical protocols for joint pain. In England, it's grown in hospital gardens specifically for patients with inflammatory conditions. But in America, we call it a weed and spray it with herbicide. I started thinking about everything my mother-in-law knew that we'd forgotten in our rush to modernize. She lived to 96 with joints that moved like a woman half her age. She cooked with ginger, turmeric, garlic, foods that we now know are powerful anti-inflammatories. She made bone broth from scratch, simmering chicken bones for hours to extract minerals we now buy in expensive supplements. She grew her own vegetables, picked her own herbs, never took a pharmaceutical drug in her life. We called her old-fashioned. Maybe she was just ahead of her time. 6 weeks into my nettle experiment, I went back to see Dr. Chen for a scheduled follow-up. He did his usual tests, checking range of motion, asking about pain levels, reviewing my medications. Your inflammatory markers have dropped significantly, he said, studying my blood work. This is unusual. Have you changed anything in your routine? I told him about the nettle tea, about reducing my tramadol dose, about feeling better than I had in years. His expression was polite but skeptical. I'm glad you're feeling better, Margaret, but be careful about making too many changes at once. These herbal remedies can interact with your medications in ways we don't understand. Ways we don't understand. That phrase stuck with me. Not that they don't work, that we don't understand how they work. There's a difference. Everything I learned about patience, about sacrifice, about trust, it's all in something called the 60-year rule. 9 rules that reverse after 60. I wish someone had given me this 20 years ago. The link is right below this video. 3 months later, I was off tramadol completely. My omeprazole dose was cut in half. My blood pressure normalized enough that Dr. Martinez reduced my lisinopril. For the first time in 20 years, I was taking fewer medications than I had been the year before. The changes weren't just physical. When pain stops being the first thing you think about when you wake up and the last thing you think about when you go to sleep, you rediscover who you are underneath all that suffering. I started cooking again. Real cooking, not just heating up food that someone else prepared. I experimented with other healing foods I remembered from childhood. Ginger tea for inflammation, bone broth for joint support, fermented vegetables for gut health that supports immune function. I planted my own nettle patch in our backyard, much to my neighbor's confusion. Margaret's growing weeds now, I heard Mrs. Patterson tell her daughter. Let them think I'm eccentric. Let them think I've lost my mind. I know what saved me. Last month, my granddaughter asked me to teach her to make dumplings for a school project about family heritage. 6 months ago, I would have said no because my hands couldn't handle the delicate work of pleating dough. Instead, we spent an afternoon in my kitchen, her small hands next to my weathered ones, both of us laughing when the dumplings turned out lopsided and perfect. "Grandma," she said as we cleaned up, "you seem different than you used to. Happier." Different, happier. Words I never thought would apply to me again at 83. But here's what I want you to understand. This isn't a story about a miracle cure. This is a story about remembering what our grandmothers knew before we forgot it in our rush to find newer, faster, more expensive solutions. Food is medicine. Not everything needs a prescription. Sometimes the answer is growing right outside your door, waiting for you to remember what it's for. If you're in pain right now, if doctors have told you to manage your expectations, if you're tired of trading one side effect for another, maybe it's time to look backward instead of forward, to remember what we knew before we forgot, to try what worked for generations before we decided it was too simple to be real. I still see Dr. Chen every 6 months. My joints still show arthritis on x-rays. The damage that accumulated over 20 years didn't magically disappear. But damage isn't the same thing as destiny. You can't always reverse what's been done, but you can stop it from getting worse. You can find your way back to a body that serves you instead of betraying you. Most importantly, you can remember that you have more control over your health than anyone wants you to believe. The pharmaceutical industry has spent billions convincing us that healing comes in bottles with child-proof caps. But healing comes from the earth, from foods that don't need labels to tell you what's in them, from wisdom that's been tested not in laboratories but in kitchens by grandmothers for thousands of years. That wisdom doesn't disappear just because we stop listening to it. It waits for us to remember. It waits for us to come home.